Hey, it's No Lucky Death, welcome back. Today we'll be reading Chapter 6, Don't Burn Yourself Out. Summary. Loomis has trouble saying no. If he were told to jump off the highest part of the castle, he probably would. But Lust notices this and watches him all day. His suspicions grow and he decides to test Luminous. What he discovers prompts him to call a family meeting. Lust stood outside the dining room watching Luminous sweeping. This was his 17th chore today. Lust had watched him the whole day since he noticed something was wrong. He saw him doing one chore after another. Previously, Luminous had done around 6 chores today. Then Lust watched Killer annoying Dust. He sent some low blasts at Killer, causing yet another mess. However, Nightmare had an errand for them before they could clean it up, so Luminous offered to clean it up for them. Horror later asked Luminous if he would help him refill the fridge and pantry. Killer then pranked Nightmare, but he didn't want to clean it up. So while Nightmare showed Pitch a new move with his magic, Killer secretly asked Luminous to clean up the sand from Nightmare's previous leggings. Even Nightmare was about to ask Luminous something, until he saw him already cleaning the kitchen, and returned to his study after Lust gave him an unusual pissed glare. At least he knew better than to ask too much of the child. With a huff, Lust felt he had enough. It was clear Luminous had a problem saying no. Casually strolling over after Horror left with his 5th large bowl of buttered popcorn, Lust began his test. "Luminous, darling," he began, his voice smooth as velvet, "would you care for some tea?" "Yes," Luminous replied without a beat, taking the dustpan to scoop the dust up. Sweat beads dripped from his face. Lust's smile grew, but his soul sank. He knew this child was too kind, to fault, just as Dream was. But this was too much for any one monster to handle alone, let alone a child. Lust cleared his throat, causing Luminous to turn towards him. "Luminous, can I ask you something?" Luminous' eyelights flicked with light, but dimmed again as the exhaustion cracked through. "Can you pass me the tangerine?" Lust asked. "Yes, Lust," Luminous answered, his voice shaky. "Can you peel the tangerine?" "Yes, Lust." "Can you split the tangerine and put each of the individual pieces on this plate, one by one?" "Yes, sir." Lust. Luminous corrected himself as if he were about to say something wrong. Lust sighed as Luminous yet again proved his theory. Luminous heard his sigh. "Is something wrong? Did I do something wrong?" he asked nervously, his breath picking up. No, you've done nothing wrong." Lust held out his hand as the young skeleton was about to hand him a plate of tangerine slices. "Keep it. You did the work, and you need the energy boost. Your magic is low again." Lust pointed out, and Luminous gave him a bewildered look. Uncertainty showed in his hesitance to eat, but he didn't object. "You know, darling, you don't need to do everything others ask of you," Lust said with a soft expression. "But I do have to. I'm sorry." Luminous looked away apologetically. "My dear, you aren't a servant. You are not expected to act like one. You are not here to be a servant. You are here to be yourself, with family." Luminous went silent for a moment. Weariness and confusion flooded his eyelights, and Lust hugged him. Lust looked at his glowing hands. his magic pulsing from stress as he clenched them, trying to control his emotions. He was supposed to be positive, but not for himself, for others. They said he had to give them happiness through actions, if not his aura. If I don't help, who will? Lust's expression grew stern. Luminous, you're more than your usefulness. You are a monster with feelings. Lust said, watching Luminous take off his crown. When I first met you years ago, you were a helpless baby bone. You couldn't even walk, but you made everyone around you happy, even without a positive aura. You didn't have anything then, but you were the most priceless little being I've ever seen, alongside your brother. According to Crescent and Starcross, you two were meant to be something great. Loomis looked up at the mention of his and Pitch's parents. Pitch I can see. They thought I was somebody as well? Loomis asked softly, but Lust heard him. Of course he would. He listened. They love both of you equally, Lust said, and they immediately went into silence. I did promise then I helped. What if I don't do as they ask of me? Lust leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. They'll manage themselves, Lust said simply. The point is, dear, you don't have to say yes every time they ask. Loomis continued. What if they need help? Then they can help each other. You do not need to feel obligated to help them every time, but if you truly wish to help, then you may. Just don't accept because they ask for your help. They do not always need it, as they are grown skeletons and can manage themselves. Lust, who sat across from Luminous, smiled sadly at him. If you keep pushing yourself, you will burn out like a candle in the wind. Luminous looked up at Lust worriedly. What if saying no makes them hate me, or they cast me out? It's my duty to help. It's why I exist. His voice was barely above a whisper. Lust's sympathetic stare grew stern. The glow in his eyelights pierced Luminous' soul. Who told you that? You also believed your parents only cared for your brother as well, didn't you? Lust said thoughtfully. What is this really about? We both know no one here would intentionally hurt you or leave you. It's a miracle that nightmare gets Pitch away from you, even for a couple hours a day. Why do you think you'll be tossed out for someone as young as yourself to think these things? Does this have anything to do with the Dreamtale villagers again? Lust pressed. His hand shook as he was pressed with questions. He didn't know if he should talk about it. He was told not to, but he was also taught to answer all questions. Lust looked at him as vibrating bones and immediately backed off. Well, you don't have to, dear. Just talk when you're ready. In Dreamtale, they called me a parasite. Luminous murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. They said if all I could do was take their happiness, I should at least give them light, and if I wanted to be useful, give them some happiness. I should heal their injured and sick, even though I didn't know how to heal some of their sicknesses. I had to read books, and for the ones I couldn't find antidotes or medicine, they would yell at me and punish me. How did they punish you? Lust asked, his eyes narrowed. They'd hit me. They'd buy me food if Pitch wasn't there, though sometimes they gave me a weird drink that made me feel bad and locked me in a small room for the night. I couldn't go back to them. Luminous' words hung in the air, a silent accusation of his own worthlessness. Les's soul sank as he asked Luminous to continue, and he did, giving some accounts of a few instances. How long had this 6-year-old suffered, and no one noticed? He didn't blame Pitch as he was a child, but also, from what it sounds like, Luminous was manipulated into not telling Pitch or anyone anything. Pitch never knew what happened to his brother. How long? Luminous paused and looked up to see Lust, who had a strong negative feeling seeping out of him. For a moment he thought it was something he said, before remembering what he had been asked. What? Luminous wasn't quite sure what Lust meant. How long have they treated you that way? Lust quietly said, lowering his head so Luminous wouldn't be scared by the look in his glowing eyelights. But he was sure he could feel his emotions regardless. It was 3 years, I think, since I could remember, Luminous answered. Lust's eye sockets widened, his eyelights blinked out. He was just a baby bone, tormented since he was 3 years old and possibly younger. He clasped his phalanges under his chin tightly. They were right. I really am just a stupid parasite. I even got you guys dragged into my mess. Luminous sniffed, using his sleeve to wipe his tears. Lust leaped up and rushed over to Luminous and scooped him up into his arms. Hush, darling. You're not stupid, nor a parasite. That kind of healing is for their doctors, not a child. What they did was wrong. You shouldn't believe their lies. You aren't a parasite because you don't only take things. You give so much. Look at what you did today. You did all your chores and then everyone else's. That's a giver if I ever saw one, dear. Lust said, his gentle tone firm. You have limits and that's okay. It doesn't make you any less a monster. Luminous searched Lust for any doubt in his words, but there were none. His own doubts and fears were seemingly endless, and a voice in the back of his skull chided him for such feelings. But they needed me, and it's my duty to help. They did not need you, Luminous, Lust corrected. They used you. There is a difference. Lust's voice grew softer, his eyes filled with sympathy. You don't have to justify their actions, dear. Luminous wiped away his tears again. He gave one last rebuke, a question to answer his one last doubt. But I did take from them. I took from them every day. My duty is to help people. Why do I take their happiness? But that isn't true. You may take positivity, but not all of it, and they can choose how to feel, just as they can choose how to treat you. They chose to hurt you for things that are out of your control, as they have done before. That is wrong of them, not of you. Lust said as he sat down with Luminous, hugging his red, violet, and bright blue shirt. It is wrong of them to control a baby bone like that. As for you, you need to set boundaries. He paused, his gaze searching Luminous's. Promise me, you will learn to say no when others ask too much of you. You deserve to act as a child while you are still so young. The weight of Lust's words sunk into his soul, and Luminous wasn't sure if it was a promise he could keep, but for Lust, he would try. He took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll try," he said softly. "It's all I ask," Lust smiled. Okay, a little explanation before the next chapter. Blue is still part of the Star Sands team with Dream, but stayed at Nightmare's castle to give Luminous some positivity, which wasn't too much of a hassle since he has gone to Nightmare's castle since he started dating Dust secretly. Meanwhile, Lust stayed with his brother in under Lust, when he and Horror just started falling for each other, and their relationship was still shaky. Then, when they were officially dating, Horror brought Lust to Nightmare's castle. Lust held no resentment towards them. He just couldn't stand the thought of taking another's life. And Nightmare didn't want someone around who didn't do his bidding at the time. They eventually get back together as Horror learns of Lust's predicament in his AU and offers a place to stay with his brother in the Horrortail AU. Since he started working with Nightmare, the food situation was handled with a new generator that they stole. Nightmare later decides to stop killing because Air, his main reason for killing, and Ink were able to get back together and kind of situated the whole destroying AUs thing. When things dialed back down, Lust decides to go back to Nightmare's castle and gets to know them better, including Nightmare himself. So, with that, Chapter 7, we need to talk. Let's believe it's time to have a talk with the rest of the gang. Lust gently kissed Luminous's forehead and put him down. "For the record, I'd still love you even if you were a parasite, and I'm certain everyone else here would agree," he winked, taking Luminous's hand and led him to the living room. Pitch was picking out their second CD for movie night. They had missed the first movie. Dust was reminding Killer not to cuss as Blue hated it, especially in the presence of kids. Nightmare was the same, and Killer stopped teasing Dust and Blue with another curse word when Nightmare glared at him with his one good eye before pulling him into his chest with his tentacle. Killer blushed as he quickly shut his mouth. Horror shielded his second bowl of butter popcorn during their interaction, but looked up with a grin and a wave as Lust walked in with Luminous. Only his greeting faltered when he saw his mate's frown. Lust decided to take center stage in front of the TV. He wanted to get this over with before their guest came. "Alright, listen up, boys. We need to talk about Luminous. Drop everything and pay attention." Instantly, Pitch straightened up from where he was crouched over some new movies on Novella's reboot series. He knew Era would love to see. He walked closer after seeing the nervous look Luminous had worn. "What's wrong?" Pitch asked when he was by his brother's side, instinctively taking his hand to calm him. "Did something happen?" Nightmare questioned. He had sensed negative emotions from both of them, but when he tried to ask, Lust had given him the most vicious glare he hadn't expected from the gentle skeleton. "Was he hurt? Sick?" Blue questioned, getting up from his spot beside Dust. It's not that big of a deal," Luminous whispered. "Now mind you, I'll have you know it is a big deal. Everyone needs to hear this. or nothing will change. So what happened? Killer asked him patiently, but his bone brow furrowed as he listened. One long recount of what happened later. What happened at Dreamtale was wrong, Lust continued after his and Luminous's explanations. He looked to everyone in turn, his expression a mixture of sadness and outrage. You all need to give him a break, Lust added after telling them what he had noticed. Pitch squeezed his brother's hand supportively. Both otherwise didn't say anything. Nightmare nodded. You're right, Lust. We should not have taken advantage of Linus's kind nature. He got up to walk towards his grandchild. Can you forgive us, little one? He asked, patting Linus's head. Linus blinked up innocently at him. Yes, though you rarely ask anything of me, Nightmare. I don't mind being asked by you guys, Linus added. Still, if it's ever too much, all you have to do is say no. You've done enough, Nightmare told him. And Linus nodded with an awkward smile. Yes, sir. Nightmare corrected gently. Linus chuckled and apologized. Jetically. Yes, Nightmare, he answered. Us patted Linus after everyone else apologized, and promised not to ask too much of him. Even Killer seemed to feel a little guilty. But don't worry, we will work on that saying no part. Will you help us, darling? Buzz asked, looking to horror. Of course, he smiled. Pitch looked over to Nightmare and tugged on his sleeve. Can we go to bed? Luminous seems tired, he pointed out as Luminous rubbed his eye socket. You don't have to. Luminous was interrupted by a small yawn. Nightmare chuckled. Of course, kid. You can watch with us next time, Luminous. No doing chores tomorrow. Yes, Killer. Cheered and Horror and Dust looked at each other excitedly. Those three get to do all the chores tomorrow, Nightmare continued, causing all three to groan. Nice going, Killer. Dust grunted as Killer let out an offended moth gasp. However, as they left, Lust turned to Killer, Dust, and Horror. His expression was stern as he pointed his finger scoldingly. No more pushing your chores on Luminous. You three will handle your own messes. Their previous youngest member until kids scolded firmly. Horror's gaze instantly fell to the floor like a kicked puppy as he scratched his crack. His cheekbones were tinted red. He realized he contributed to Luminous's load by asking him for favors without asking him if he was busy, or thinking that maybe the others had already asked him for favors already. Sorry, he murmured. I should have noticed how tired he was. Dust looked away, his guilty conscience evident in his posture. I never realized, he whispered, feeling his sins crawl up his back. Or was that Paps again? Killer looked emotionless, despite Nightmare giving his emotions back to him after Killer insisted, one night, when their relationship got serious. This way, Killer knew his emotions weren't being manipulated like they had been once before, and so he could love their children the way they were meant to be loved. Killer felt like he had let down his deceased son as well as his grandchild by his thoughtless actions, and perhaps he had. A tentacle around his shoulder brought Killer back to living. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have given my chores to a kid. Uncharacteristic remorse seeped out of his voice as Killer snapped. I just thought you liked helping, so... I guess I should have thought he may have already had too much on his plate already. It's okay, guys, Luminous said with a shy smile as he walked back from around the corner, having listened to the conversation. I do like helping. I just had a hard time keeping up with it all. It's not your fault. Of course you had trouble, little Luminous, Blue said, rubbing his skull. Just remember, every skeleton has their limits, even the strongest. So if you ever need help, just say so and we will help you if you need it. You don't always need to be the one helping others. Friends and family always help each other. Blue left with his usual before Nightmare told them it was the kids' time for bed, just as Air showed up. Am I a weak guardian for not being able to handle their request? Luminous asked later that night before they fell asleep. Pitch sat up instantly in their bed. Definitely not. You are my brother, grandson of Nightmare and Dream, and the son of two brave heroes who fought a goddess. How can you be weak? Pitch encouraged, hugging Luminous from behind as he was faced away from him. That felt wrong. They usually faced each other since they were babies. Luminous shifted slightly in bed to look over his shoulder at Pitch. You really believe that, Mooney? He sniffed. He had been simply silently crying. Yes. Pitch's answer was instant. Then after a few moments of shocked silence, Pitch's grip tightened. They had no right to treat you that way, he hissed, barely containing his rage. His violet and white eyes flashed coldly at the image of the villagers he once thought had changed. The cruel words that played like a dark melody in his head shattered his naive belief, striking a chord of pain in his soul. He always wished to become stronger to protect his brother, yet here he was fighting out about this justice too late. He was too late again. Why didn't you tell me? Pitch's voice cracked, laced with a mixture of anger, concern, and most of all, pain. Luminous shrank a little, but rolled around to face his brother. I didn't want to bother you. I'm sorry, Luminous murmured. You were so busy training. Besides, I thought what they said was fair. Fair? How they treated you is not fair. I would never feel bothered by you asking me for help, no matter if I'm busy. I will always make time for my brother. You're the only brother I have, after all, Pitch declared with a grin. You deserve to have a say in what you want to do, so I will help you practice saying no as well, okay, Lumi? Luminous hugged Pitch back, rubbing his face into his chest. Okay, Mooney. Alright, so this was yet another Angst Comfort chapter. I do a lot of those because that's more my style, but I will try to do some fluff here and there, hopefully. But we wrapped up with Luminous and Pitch's day with Nightmare Gang. And they will be training with Dream and Cross in the next chapter, I believe. And be prepared for more drama, okay? Have a nice day. Night night.